Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show from Canada Life Center. It's been a while since we did one of these. Nice to be back in this building. Unfortunately, it didn't change the results for the Winnipeg Jets, who've now lost their fifth straight game. And let me tell you, we just saw one of the best teams in the National Hockey League play here in Winnipeg tonight, and it wasn't the Winnipeg Jets. That Florida Panthers team was absolutely awesome, buzzing, hard on the pucks, super skilled, great forecheck, kind of a willingness to go to those dirty areas. I think that was a very good example of what I think the Winnipeg Jets coaches, Winnipeg Jets fans thought that the Winnipeg Jets could play like and have thought that for a long time now. That idea of getting inside and trying to create, havoc in the front of the net, taking the pucks hard to the net. Like if you take a look at that fifth goal that they scored for as a perfect example, that's, I think, when Dave Lowry and back when Paul Maurice was here started talking about getting the puck to the net and scoring those dirty goals. I think that's exactly what he was talking about. That team is a handful. I think that the 5-3 score was somewhat generous for the Winnipeg Jets. It seemed like they kept scoring their way back into that game. But at every point, it looked to me like, what happened out there was inevitable. So that's my take, quick take. We'll get far deeper into this. And to do that, we got to bring in my main man, Kenny Wiebe. Here comes Kenny. Kenny, that music of yours so often the highlight of my night. I think it's going to be the highlight of a lot of people's night as Jets walk away with another loss, their fifth straight loss. It was clear in talking, especially with Paul Stastny after the game, that there's a level of frustration with this team at this stage, and why not losing 5 straight games? We talked about it in our post-game hit that we did for Sportsnet. The Jets, they've been below the playoff line for a long time, but it looked like it was a manageable place to be because they had so many games in hand. But when you lose 5 straight of those games in hand, you're not doing yourself any favors. Hey, I'm pulling back the chair, tuck in the napkin. Let's hear you go to the buffet on this one, because we need to get an idea of what you're thinking here and where this Jets team is at this stage.
Yeah, Sean, I mean, certainly an interesting game. It was another one of those sort of close but not close enough situations and scenarios for the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, they were able to have some stretches where they thought they were, kind of rolling and kind of counter-punching. But here's the problem, Sean. After falling behind, the Jets were always in a position to be the ones having to provide a counter-punch. And guess what? The Florida Panthers look like a heavyweight champion because they always had one more punch to throw back in the other direction. And man, I mean, this was a night where the Jets actually did a good job of containing the Florida Panthers stars in the game, and they still gave up 5. So yeah, I mean, I also thought too, in terms of the buffet, I mean, Paul Stastny took a nice trip to the buffet himself, and I actually liked all of what I heard from Paul Stastny. I thought he found the perfect tone of frustration, but also providing solutions. That's the thing about Paul Stastny. He's not just up there banging the table saying that he's pissed off about something. He has a lot of the answers on what the Jets actually have to do in order to turn these losses into wins and potentially getting onto a run. And I love the perspective, right? Here's the beauty of Paul Stastny. He's not afraid to say, hey, you know what leads to individual success? Team success. That's got to be the foundation. The Jets need to be much more structurally sound. They can't afford to be giving up 5 goals a night. But here's the thing, Sean. I mean, the Jets are not alone. This is the 16th time the Florida Panthers have scored 5 or more goals.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that as a, hey, it's okay for the Jets to give up 5. But this is a team that is absolutely exceptional, as you mentioned, very deep. Their most dangerous line was their third line, Sean.
Yeah.
What have we been talking about for the Jets? The need for secondary scoring. Well, the Florida Panthers got 2 goals and an assist from Mason Marchment today, and he could have had 4 goals in the first period. So to me, and that's just another show of depth. Jets had some moments. I mean, man, oh man. We'll get to Cole Perfetti a bit later, but I mean, hey, Cole Perfetti's doing his part. He played his 9th game, and I don't see any scenario where he's not playing a 10th on Thursday night against the Vancouver Canucks. We'll dig a little deeper into that later. But man, the Jets are in a spot where they need to start piling up some wins here, and 2 points out of the last 10 available. That leaves them in a rather precarious position when it comes to their playoff standing, and that's below the playoff line. And they just got passed by another. They'll be passed by another team in 1 hour's time, as one of the Vancouver Canucks or Edmonton Oilers will be going to 42 points tonight.
Yeah, see, this is the problem. This is the problem when you fall down so far. And I think that the tough part of this for Jets fans is they feel it. I think you and I feel it. I think there's a perception that the Jets have the horses to get themselves out of this, right? That no one is saying this is the season, they're out of it. Some people are. We've had people saying that in our chat room. But there's no doubt about it. The Jets are a team that is capable of getting out of this. But the further that you fall in situations like this, the tougher it becomes because of exactly what you just said, Ken. Tonight, the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks are playing, and one of those teams is going to get 2 points. And that's the problem, is when you let a number of teams up ahead of you, they have to play each other if it's divisional games. And so you're going to put yourself in a situation where it's a lose-lose night. One of those teams is going to win, and they're going to get points. So I don't know. Right now, if you're a fan tonight, would you prefer that the Vancouver Canucks win because the Jets have games in hand on them? So yes, the Vancouver Canucks, if they win, are going to jump ahead of the Jets in the standings, but the Jets, I believe, will have 3 games in hand on them. Well, if all of a sudden Vancouver walks into town here on Thursday night and beats them, now they're 3 points up on the Jets, and yeah, the Jets still have 3 games in hand, but you got to win 2 of those games, something that the Jets have been having a hard time doing lately. And I wanted to get to this. I tweeted about it earlier. You and I talked about it.
Yep.
I still like the Jets' chances for one reason, and that's because I see a faltering coming out of either the Oilers, who really, we can't count on them to have got their stuff together here at this stage. It's still an uphill climb for the Vancouver Canucks. I don't have a ton of faith in the San Jose Sharks. I'm waiting for one or both of the Anaheim Ducks or the LA Kings to maybe come back down to earth and fall apart. So that Pacific Division still looks vulnerable to me. But here's the problem, Ken. The Jets have fallen so far behind the top 4 teams in the Central Division, the Colorado Avalanche, Nashville, St. Louis, and Minnesota, that it's almost a pipe dream to think that you're going to get anything other than that very last spot. So yes, there's a number of vulnerable teams in the Pacific, but here's the fly in that ointment. The Dallas Stars are a team that if they get in there, it's not going to matter what happens in the Pacific, because the Central Division will have spoken for the top 3 spots in the Central and both wild cards if the Dallas Stars stay ahead of the Winnipeg Jets. So the Jets are in a dogfight against a very good team that is shown to be very capable. One of the best games I've seen a team play against that Florida Panthers team in the last month or so was the Dallas Stars going and punching them in the mouth and beating them. The next time they played them, they lost that game. But it doesn't change the fact that the Jets now, above anything, are in a dogfight for that last playoff spot with the Dallas Stars. Never mind the fact that you have to hope that a number of those teams in the Pacific are going to falter. So they're putting themselves in a worse and worse spot. And never mind, Ken, that we got to get into the fact and talk about they put themselves in a place where they're going to be playing catch up. Well, they're going to have to do it now through February in a really, really tough schedule. And when I say tough schedule, I'm talking about a lot of tough teams they have to play. But add to the fact that it's a bunch of games crammed together. They're playing catch up in the middle of a month where they're being asked to play an inordinate amount of games. It is a tough tough uphill slog for this Winnipeg Jets team to get back above that playoff line.
Yeah, and guess what? I mean, the Jets are 6th in the Central. The 7th place Chicago Blackhawks, who were thought to be in all-out, almost not quite tanking mode, they're only 4 points up on the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Yes, the Jets have games in hand. What is it now? 3 games in hand. The Blackhawks are 4 points behind the Jets. The Blackhawks are operating at a minus 38 goal differential compared to the team we just saw today, Sean. The Florida Panthers, they're plus 50 in goals for and against. So, man, oh man, it's a tough situation. You're right. I mean, the Jets are, as Paul Stastny pointed out so eloquently, they're going to need to rattle off a bunch of wins, but he also has the perspective to know they can't be thinking about winning 5 in a row. They need to be thinking about one single game against one of those teams that's in that cluster in the murky middle. I know someone said they didn't like the mushy middle last time, but let's call it the murky middle then. I mean, boy, oh boy, the Jets just, they haven't been able to find it. And I mean, hey, they ran into a tough stretch of games against some of the best teams in the National Hockey League, but they're on record as saying they want to be one of those better teams. So, I mean, we heard Blake Wheeler talk about it on the weekend. Moral victories are not enough for the Winnipeg Jets. They view themselves as a good hockey team, and they have a lot of those components. But as you've been talking about, Sean, for quite some time, and you've basically been asking everybody to step to the podium, how do they fix it? I mean, Paul Stastny right up in the middle saying an inconsistent play is what's sinking them. But they haven't been able to find the answer in order to try to turn that around, to turn that inconsistency into consistency. I mean, we hear about identity all the time. The Jets right now, they're not scoring enough. I mean, but as Paul Stastny pointed out, 3 should be enough on a lot of nights. But you can't be giving up 5, and that there's no path to the Jets making the playoffs if you're giving up 5 goals a night. Those are just the facts. I mean, they need to they got to get their offense going, but they're only going to get their offense going if they can take care of their defensive structure first.
Kenny, I didn't ask you about this off screen, but I thought there was an interesting comment that Paul Stastny made about like staying positive, and he referred specifically to himself and Blake Wheeler. Now, I found that fascinating that he said that. Clearly he talked about being frustrated, so maybe that's what he's saying is, yeah, I'm frustrated and I'm showing it right now here on the podium, but I can't live in that frustration as one of the leaders on this team and as one of the older guys or the veterans on this team. I can't live there. But I just wanted to get your take on him bringing up both himself and Blake Wheeler as guys who need to stay positive for this team to turn things around.
For me, that's simple, Sean. I don't think it is anything, too deep. I think what he means is, as one of the leaders, he needs to be. The Jets have gotten a lot younger in a short period of time in terms of players that are in their roster. Young players look to their leaders for guidance, and I think he simply means that even though he's frustrated with the position the Jets find themselves in, he simply needs to be expressing a positive exterior in terms of helping to lead some of those young players as they try to move forward and push through this scenario of adversity. I don't see it as any. I mean, again, I know you're not suggesting it's some big deal, but to me, I think it's more a matter of. I think it's just that friendly reminder that in the dog days of the season, which Paul Stastny also talked about, I think that he simply was saying that he knows he's one of the leaders and he's going to have to stay positive in order to help this team push through. And the other part of that equation, Sean, as we know, this isn't a situation where you can have frustration being shown or fingers being pointed, because that's what rips teams apart when things are going poorly. To me, Paul Stastny's been on a lot of great teams in all of his stops. He's been on a lot of really good teams. He's a great leader, and to me, I think it's nothing more than trying to provide some stability at a time when the waters are getting a little choppy.
You were talking about.
How did you interpret it? How did you interpret it? Did you see it any differently, or?
Well, I don't know. To me, I don't know that you bring up those names in case you mean it means something.
But they're the oldest guys. They're the 2 oldest players.
Sure, but I mean, they're not the 2. they're not the only two leaders on this team. I mean, a guy
No.
like Nate Schmidt is over 30. There's plenty of leaders on this team. They're the oldest guys. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's just like he picked the two oldest guys on the team and said we need to stay positive. I think there's usually a message in there. I think Blake Wheeler in the past has been a captain who has called himself out in the media, saying that he needs to be like brighter in the room and handle this better. So if anything, Ken, I think it's, if it's not pointed to something in the room that he's saying we need to get on board and be the change. We need to be the guys leading us out of this. And maybe he's seen examples of them not being those guys recently. At the very least, it's reinforcing the behavior that he feels that those two are going to have to show to get their way out of this. Hey, quick
one for me. Blake's only played 3 games since December, so I don't see a dark cloud kind of scenario kind of seeping in or anything. That's why I think that Paul is just saying that, guys like Wheels and myself, I just have to say in that positive frame of mind.
And that's why I suggest the kind of positive reinforcement of that. Like maybe that's his message, and I'm not saying that he needs it, but that, hey, guys pick each other up, right? We do it here on this show. If you feel like another guy's not on the top of his game, you nudge him along. You do the kind of things that you need to do to help your teammates get through this. So maybe that's his subliminal message, or maybe that's just him throwing it out there and saying to Wheeler and just goading him on to say like, hey, you are a guy who has an effect on this team, and if you can be positive, you can sell other guys on this as well. There's reasons that, if you can see a light at the end of the tunnel and you can point to it, then everyone else is going to follow the direction that you go. And that's what I saw about that. But I do think, Ken, it also says something about where this team's at this moment. Yeah, Blake Wheeler just got back, but he's got back and he's with a team that's lost 3 straight games. These are dark times right now for the Winnipeg Jets. I can't remember the Jets being in this bad of a situation since the last year that they lost the playoffs. Like this is reason to wave the red flag. The Jets have to get going. They have to get going right now. Connor Hellebuyck said it 2 games ago that he's at a stage where he's feeling the pressure and they have to get going. Well, they've lost 2 games since. Again, they're coming into the toughest part. They're coming into the toughest part of the schedule for the season. So I do think that there's a little bit of coaching going on here. This is an established player saying, hey, you come along with me. Let's lead these guys out of it. I do think there was a little bit of something to that. You had mentioned the young guys and their effect on those young guys. We can't talk about young guys without talking about Ville Heinola, who got into the game tonight, had a bumpy ride in that game. For the very first shift, I saw him being super engaged, super active, trying to cut plays off before they started. I thought, okay, this is what he brings to his game. And Ken, I do think it's something he has to bring to his game, right? He's not the biggest player. He's not going to shut down plays with his physicality. He's going to do it with his smarts. And one of the things that he was doing was beating players to a spot in that first shift and shutting things down. And I saw him continue to do that throughout the game. But we've said this time and time again, when you've got young players, you're going to live with their potential and you're going to live with their mistakes. And he follows up that shift by just kind of casually throwing a puck up the boards. It's picked up, thrown to the front of the net, ends up in the back of the net. You get, in a game where you can't be giving away goals against a team like the Florida Panthers, because to your point, you can't be playing back, catch up with them. You get one of your young rookies making the mistake that leads to that first goal. Had a bit of a tough night. Where did you see his night, and where does he go from here?
Yeah, I mean, we got to remember, Ville Heinola hasn't played in quite some time, and I think that was pretty evident at times. There were certainly some moments from Ville that were, showcased him using his strengths. Even as something as simple in the third period, he was under duress and he makes a really smart play and then finding an outlet in the middle of the ice for a nice zone entry. But I mean, hey, there's no way of sugarcoating it. Ville Heinola made a mistake on the first goal. It was kind of a blind, panicky pass around the boards. I mean, in a perfect world, there would have been a winger there. But it's very similar to what happened to Dylan DeMello against Boston. Just kind of rimmed it around the boards to nobody except for the opponent. Yeah. And it ended up in the back of the net. And here's the other problem. When, a couple shifts later, the play to the corner, Heinola was late getting to Sam Reinhart. And now, again, it's not Heinola's fault that the coverage in front was not there, but A, he was a bit late to get there, and B, his stick was not in the passing lane. But again, I'm not here to dump on Ville Heinola. We've said we wanted to see him play. We saw him play, and, unless Josh Morrissey can find his way out of COVID protocol with potentially hoping it was a false positive as well, he's going to be in the lineup on Thursday. So you know what? Great. I want to see more of him.
Yeah.
Right? This is part of it. I mean, there are going to be mistakes, but there are also going to be, flashes of greatness, because that's the kind of skill that he has in his arsenal. But, I mean, of course there are going to be mistakes. And for you, people who think that I'm being tough on him, I mean, I think quite highly of Ville Heinola, but everyone who thinks that he was just going to come in and dominate and play 20 minutes, that's not usually how it works at the NHL level. So, again, I want to see more of him. He made some mistakes, but he also made some smart plays. So, again, he's got smarts, but this is the thing we've been talking about. His offensive game is probably already at an NHL caliber. His defensive zone coverage needs work. It is going to need to continue to need work. But, I mean, right now, here's an opportunity for Ville Heinola to start earning some more of the trust of the coaching staff. And that's how those players work their way up the depth chart. What were we talking about when it comes to Cole Perfetti at the start of the year? He had one game on the third line. By the second game, he was on the fourth line. Then he got sent. He was a healthy scratch and went back to the Moose. Well, right now, Cole Perfetti's playing on the top line. So, of course, you need some patience when it comes to seeing how he's going to do. And I love how Dave Lowry handled it. Dave Lowry wasn't about to throw Ville Heinola under the bus today, nor should he. So, but again, people that think that the coach, just doesn't care about young players, here's another great example. If Dave Lowry didn't care about the psyche of a young player, he would have said he made a couple of mistakes that ended up in the back of the net. That's not what he did. He said he made a few mistakes, you're going to learn from them, and that he thought he handled the situation pretty well. You know what? Ville Heinola hasn't played in over 3 weeks. He played just over, 10 minutes here, 10:40, 14 shifts. I mean, here's the other part. Yeah, he was on for those 2 goals, but then he did a better job as the game wore on. So again, young players can crumble under the pressure of being scored on early. So I give Ville Heinola a lot of credit for being able to bounce back after a tough start into the hockey game, and that he didn't get overly frustrated or get away from his game entirely. So, I mean, I think he handled that portion of it well. I mean, hey, remember Ben Sherratt's debut, Sean? He was -3. He was on the ice, I think, for goals on each of the first 3 shifts. This guy had been waiting for basically 2 years for a call-up. He went up and played one of the best teams in the NHL. It didn't go well, but guess what? He learned from it. And I expect Ville Heinola to learn from this, and I expect him to play with the same kind of confidence that has allowed him to dominate at the American Hockey League level. That doesn't mean he's going to go out and play 20 minutes and dominate the next game, but I expect him to improve because he's a smart hockey player. But he's a smart hockey player that has parts of his game he needs to work on. But guess what? That applies to pretty much everyone in the entire Jets lineup. So there are going to be some growing pains, and today was part of that. But I think, now it's up to Ville Heinola to put that behind him and play a solid game on Thursday night.
I think that being forced into the lineup with the loss of Josh Morrissey is exactly what he needs. Like, I don't think you're serving a player at all if you take him out of the lineup after something like that. Now, yes, guys like Dylan Sandberg have come in and they didn't skip a beat, right? Like, they fit right in right off the bat. Maybe that size. I'm not going to try and break that down, what's happening there. I don't think this was Ville Heinola's best night, clearly. I don't think it's a true representation of what he is as a player. I think there's going to be but I will say this, and a lot of people are going to think, he came in when he was 18 and he had that really great showing before they took him out. And then there started to be, every time he makes it back into the lineup, it seems to be there's these gaffes that he has, or at least these ideas of not protecting the puck when he has it, or making a play that is just, doesn't need to be made. maybe a little bit more patience is in order. But to me, to your point, I mean, he's figured the AHL out, so that's been mastered. So at some point, you're going to have to decide: is this player, do we believe he's going to make it at the NHL level? I think the Jets feel that's the case. So then now you're going to have to live with the growing pains of him getting there. The tough part about that is it's hard to live with growing pains when you're in the situation you're in right now, because you can't be digging yourself a hole when you need to be winning hockey games right now. So that's the tricky part. The tightrope balance that Dave Lowry is going to have to do here with the younger players down the stretch, because clearly it looks like a lot of them are here to stay. There's been a lot of changes that have been made that players have earned their ice time, so the young guys are going to be part of this push. It seemed clear with Paul Maurice that he was not willing to live with those young players making mistakes that could cost this team on the kind of the razor's edge of falling in towards the playoffs or falling out of it. But it looks like Dave Lowry's going to go there. So if you're going to go there, I say embrace it wholeheartedly. Ville Heinola needs a chance to kind of redeem himself next game. You take him out of the lineup and don't give him that opportunity, I don't think it helps him at all. So I definitely think I definitely think you're hitting the nail on the head with that one, Ken.
One other quick one, and just to wrap the bow on that one. I mean, there are going to be times when Ville's offensive instincts are going to generate offense for a team that isn't scoring enough. So there is going to be some give and take there for sure. And again, I mean, I'm on record. I think that Ville Heinola is going to be a very good NHL player. I just don't think that he's ready for 20 minutes a night right now, which is a theory that I've felt before. But I mean, let's see. Maybe, could it happen differently with a different partner? I mean, here's the other part, Sean, just staying on the defense briefly. I wanted to see Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon together. And we saw them together tonight. There were some signs of good. There were some issues that ended up in the back of the net. But it was also a lot more of an issue in terms of the structure. And that, Paul Stastny touched on that too. And I mean, you asked both Stastny and Dave Lowry about it. What did you think about their answers about the inability to keep the center of the ice clean after seemingly taking care of that part of the ice, especially against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Sunday afternoon?
Well, it was just, I thought they were phenomenal against the Penguins. They were not giving the Penguins anything inside. And how many times did the Penguins skate right down Broadway unscathed in this game? Now, it's funny, we were, I was having some conversations with some of the journalists we were watching the game with, and one of them had suggested that Hellebuyck hadn't had the best night, and I started thinking about it. Well, the first goal, it's an in-tight redirect perfectly upstairs. I don't think he's stopping that. I can't remember the second goal. The third goal is a shot that redirects off the player in front of the net into the open net. You're not stopping that. The fifth goal is he stops the initial shot, and there's just an onslaught of players who get past the defenseman and go in. So I don't hold this loss on Connor Hellebuyck tonight. However, we are going to have to get into the conversation about how he's handling the puck, and we'll do that. I'm going to hold that separate from how he played in this. But the real culprit here tonight, like, think about it. There was a breakaway that he maybe didn't stop, but he forced the player to the post and he hit the post. But how many times did Panthers players skate right down the middle of the ice with a great shot, and he stopped those shots? I mean, standing tall in his crease. This game, in my mind, had the potential to be a blowout. We've seen this team, this Panthers team, put up 7 goals, quite like, similar to what Colorado has been able to do. This easily could have been a 9-goal game for them if those players are cashing in on those chances. Yeah, the Jets had some chances the other way, and I've noticed people there's some people optimistic in the chat room here who are saying, there are some ones that trickled through. Adam Lowry, you think about his breakaway and how he beat him, but then puts it wide of the net. Yes, both teams had their chances. I thought the high danger chances were far more in favor of the Florida Panthers. And again, that middle part of the ice, which you do not want to give away, was wide open. And it just leads to the question of consistency, Ken. Paul Stastny talked about it. Oh, isn't it good to have the helicopter
good timing
in the building here? Boy, I missed this.
Well, at least it's only the Zamboni so far.
Zamboni is the lesser of two evils, no doubt.
That's true. That's true.
But I mean, so to have the Jets be so rock solid at it against a really good team in the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have tons of offensive weapons. We saw what they did tonight. They seemed to spot half the game against the Coyotes and then put up 6 goals like it was no thing. for them to shut that area down so effectively on one night and then just leave it wide open the next night, the question has to be, how does that happen, Ken? How do you lock something up and figure out how to do it and then turn around and absolutely abandon it the very next night? This team is inconsistent, and inconsistency kills. That's the one thing that really good teams all have in common. They're consistent. That's the one thing great hockey players in the NHL have in common. They're consistent. You'll hear it from the stars who talk about younger players. That's their job, is to become more consistent as the years go on. That's how you get to be a good hockey player. The Winnipeg Jets are a bad hockey team right now because they're grossly inconsistent. They come out some games and they start the game really hot and then they don't finish it. They fall apart in the beginning of the game and then they finish hot, but they're never kind of putting it all together. You do not know what to expect from this Winnipeg Jets hockey team at this moment, other than they're going to falter in some area that the opposition is going to exploit, and they're going to lose that game. And I mean, ask Dave Lowry, how do you get to that? Well, he says you go back to work on it tomorrow and you keep reinforcing things and getting that attention to detail. But I mean, I pose this question to you, Ken. You've got established guys. We talked about Stastny and Wheeler are older guys in this league, and we talked about them leading them out of this. There should be leadership on this team. Yes, they're bringing in young guys, and young guys are going to make mistakes, but this is a veteran group, and a veteran group should not be losing focus on attention to detail, especially one that is supposed to have, by their own admission, learned lessons from years past and was, like, Ken, how many times did we hear players voluntarily, not us asking, but voluntarily in training camp this year, bring up the Stanley Cup? I mean, this team has high hopes for itself and has had since the beginning of the season, and they're losing consistency because they can't narrow down their attention to detail. That's a problem.
For sure. Paul Stastny got into it. Here's the thing, Sean. I mean, we know the answer. I mean, the Jets dictated the style of play when they played the Pittsburgh Penguins. What happened today? Well, the visitors dictated the terms of play. They wanted to play a more run-and-gun game, and the Jets said, right on, let's do it, which played right into the strengths of the Florida Panthers. So that's part of the problem. You're right. I mean, the Jets needed to play a more of a, they need to use their skill, but their structure is the most important part of this team right now, Sean. The lack of structure is what has put them in this position where they've lost 5 consecutive games, and that's what they need to fix. I mean, that we talked about it the other day, and I don't know. I mean, the Jets, it all comes down to commitment. I don't think it's a lack of effort, but the Jets need to be better defensively, and until they get to that point, it's not going to work for them.
Let's talk about Hellebuyck's gaffes. I mean, okay, we're talking about the leaders on this team. Connor Hellebuyck is clearly a leader on this team. He's been the backbone of this team for years and probably made this team look better than it is, and very much so on the defensive side of the puck for a number of years. But I take a look at this and I think of some gaffes on the night. Turns over the puck again, which leads to the third goal of the game. So, I mean, there we are. We've got, Dave Lowry had said it. This is a game of mistakes, and the Jets made their share of mistakes on this night. Here's the one thing I can tell you right now, Ken, about Connor Hellebuyck is people in our chat room, on social media, from the stands, can yell all they want asking him to stop playing the puck. The one thing I know about Connor Hellebuyck is he will not. He will keep playing the puck no matter how many mistakes he makes, because his belief is it's the right thing to do, and the more he does it, he's going to get to be a better player. But situationally, in games like tonight, in games like Pittsburgh, you can't have the backbone of your team costing you games by giving the puck away. Where do we go at this stage with Connor Hellebuyck and his puck-playing gaffes?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Sean. I mean, I'm not making excuses for him, but there's a big difference between Sam Reinhart knocking the puck down basically at the height of the dasher board compared to the play that Jeff Carter made to make the interception. So, I mean, what did I say after the last game? Hellebuyck's got to get that up on the glass, or at least around the boards. And in that case, he did actually do that, but Reinhart makes an excellent play to bat it down, and lo and behold, it's in the back of the net. I mean, you're right, it's costly. I mean,
but Isn't that play there? This is what I'm getting at. Yes, Reinhart makes a great play. It's a phenomenal play, and this was a phenomenal hockey team, right? So a lot of the mistakes, when you've got a team that can make you pay the way they do, that's fine. But I see Connor Hellebuyck is making a play there that he could have left the puck for a defenseman. The Jets defenseman would have been the first one to that puck with a little bit of time. He doesn't need to play that puck. And I just wonder if it's almost like does he come out trying to prove something tonight to say, I messed this up last game and I'm going to show everybody I'm going to keep playing this puck? Is it a stubbornness? Is his stubbornness costing him at this stage?
Yeah, for me, Sean, I think on that play, it should have been icing. So I think he did initially leave it on the play. It looked like that was a play that should have been icing on the call, but I don't think it's a stubbornness that leads him to do that. But we do know that Connor Hellebuyck is very driven, and stubbornness has been part of what's made him very good for a very long period of time here. But again, this is a guy that's
a bad take. This is a bad take.
Yeah.
Here. This is,
here's the point.
I don't give out wake-ups, but if I did.
You could. There you go. We could hold up the sign here. The sign. Yeah. Hold it up. Here's the thing. I mean, I got a text this week earlier on, too, saying Hellebuyck needs to spend extra time on puck handling. Sean, we're at practice. I know people may not believe it. Connor Hellebuyck does spend time at practice working on his puck handling. So, I mean, he's got to continue to work on it. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I know the other day Hustler was joking around that, some people think that he needs the dog collar, the shock collar that says stay in the crease. I mean, the majority of the time the goalie goes back to help his defenseman put it in a better position for him. Again, this time he was a little bit under duress and he made a play that got batted down. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck has saved his teammates a lot more than his teammates have saved him. But you're right. I mean, right now, in games where the Jets are losing by a goal or two, you can't afford a mistake to end up in the back of the net. So that's why, again, it's a conundrum for the Jets. I don't think you can just tell them to stay in the crease and let everybody else handle it. Because here's the other part. The Jets haven't handled it very well in their own end. So, mistakes are going to happen. Connor needs to clean that part of it up. But overall, again, I think that, again, is that something where I know that Connor says he feels great physically. Is there any element of mental fatigue after starting 12 in a row and 26 out of 28? I don't know the answer. I'm not a psychology major. And we know that Connor Hellebuyck wouldn't tell you if he wasn't he probably would tell you if he's not feeling well physically. But he is the one who knows he is the driver on this team. He knows he needs to be playing at an elite level. So, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. I don't think I don't think it's something where it's his stubbornness, but here's a guy who wants to be great every single night, and if he thinks he can help his team with an outlet, he'll want to do that.
The thing about him that I wonder is, so Connor Hellebuyck has said this before, he'd play every single game if it was up to him, right? So he's a guy who's going to go out and believe, listen, this is the thing with great players. Great players believe that their team is better off with them on the ice, right? So I always understand that about people who think that good players or players who are impact players who may age out and their game changes, they're not the ones usually who typically say, you know what, I'm not the player I used to be, I'm going to sit back, because that's not the mindset of a star. The mindset of a star is this team is better with me on the ice doing something. So Connor Hellebuyck is clearly that. He'd play every single game if you gave him the opportunity to do it. And he's the kind of guy who thinks, I'm going to go out and I'm going to play the puck and I'm going to affect this game in a positive way for my team. I'm going to alleviate these issues, right? But we know that the Jets aren't better off with Connor Hellebuyck playing 82 games in a season, right? The fact that he feels that way is tipping the cap that sometimes that guy needs to be reined in. A coach needs to rein him in, and you're talking about it, and I think it's an interesting question. One, is the fact that he's played all these games in a row, is it draining him? The way he plays the puck, or the fact that maybe some of these gaffes do have to be, have to do with being tired. Doesn't that then fall on coaching? Isn't it up to the coaches to kind of give him the parameters of when he should be or not be playing the puck? Or are they happy with what he's doing right now? And then B, are we at the stage where we need to start having the conversation about the coaching and the usage of the player needs to be different because it's not working right now?
Well, here's the thing. The Jets didn't have a choice lately, right, Sean? I mean, with the way the schedule's been spread out, and then Eric Comrie landing in COVID protocols, I mean, I just don't think there was any other choice. And that's not a knock on Mikhail Burden, but I don't think Mikhail Burden is ready for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I don't think the Jets have really had a choice. And then back to your original point about the standings, I mean, right now, I thought that they might get a game out of Comrie before the break, but I've changed my tune on that one. I think that Hellebuyck has to play Thursday, and then with the way the games are spread out next week or on the weekend with St. Louis, and then the last game before the All-Star break on Tuesday, I fully expect Hellebuyck to play all three because of how, desperate might be a little bit of a, exaggeration, but like Hellebuyck said himself, it's time. It's time to go here, and he's got to be the one who's getting it together between the pipes, and I expect him to be solid against the Vancouver Canucks on Thursday.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know.
Well, sorry, here's the thing. Eric Comrie's last start, Sean, was December 10th. Can you reasonably expect Eric Comrie? We know he's a hard worker. Can you reasonably expect Eric Comrie, who's already played Vancouver twice? I don't blame him for the 2 losses, but the Jets lost both of those games. I can't see how, as a coaching staff, they could justify playing a backup in that situation, unless Hellebuyck says, I'm too tired to go. And I doubt that he says that. I don't think that he would say that.
I just think if you're falling behind it, right, if you're starting to make decisions saying, well, we got to do it now, right, because we've got ourselves in this pickle. It's just you're digging things out further. At some point, you got to have faith in the guys around you. If it's the right thing to do to get a guy some rest, even if you don't feel you have the personnel in there, what you should be doing as a good team is saying, listen, this guy's been here for you. We feel he needs a rest. He's going to get a rest. That means Mikhail Burden is going in, and that means all of you, every single one of you. Defense, you have to be on guard. Offense, we need you to show up tonight. It's the time when you're trying to ask your team to rally around that player and get something done. And I just think that it's a shortcut to try and go with Helly over and over and over again. I get your idea of trying to, limp along and get through this until you get to that little bit of a break. But that break comes, and let's be honest, Ken, he's coming off of a pretty big break. You know what I mean? Like basically 2 full weeks off with 1 game sandwiched in between there. He's had that break. If he's tired now mentally because of the amount of games he's played this season, tacking more and more games on and getting to the All-Star break just to come out of the All-Star break and then go into this murderer's row that we're seeing that they're going to have to play this schedule in February, I just think you're putting the one player who is probably most important at digging you out of this behind the 8 ball is not a good way to handle this situation.
Yeah, just for me, a quick one there, just wrapping up. I just don't know that the 2 extra days will be helpful in this situation. I think that, Hellebuyck played one of his best games of the year on Sunday, other than the puck that bounced off his skate and the puck that Jeff Carter intercepted. So
right.
The fact that he was that sharp, despite playing on a back-to-back in what was his 11th start in a row, suggests to me that he still has plenty left in the tank. And I was talking with Trevor Kidd on the pregame show, and I was wondering the same thing, Sean. I was thinking maybe he does need that break, and Trevor thought no. With the way the schedule had been spread out, some guys want to play all the time. And one thing that I wonder that I brought up, I wonder with the fact that Dave Lowry went to the Stanley Cup final when Mika Kiprusoff, basically, I'll have to go back and look, but he might have played 70 games that year. He might have had that many starts. So we talked all the time about, when Paul Maurice had Archer's Urbe rolling almost every night in Carolina. I wonder if he sees that. We know that Hellebuyck's a guy that gets better with rhythm. So I'm just not sure that giving him Thursday night off gets him into a sharper place for an afternoon game against St. Louis. I think he would find it to be better to stay in this rhythm now through the All-Star break, take a break, unplug, spend some time with his newborn and his wife, and unplug from the game, come back recharged, because we know that next start is coming for Eric Comrie. 40 games in 81 days, you're going to need your backup more than just once every 2 months.
Kenny, I love this idea from Joe from Winnipeg about wearing the Renny headband. We got to build something into the show where you've got some kind of like prognostication. If it doesn't work out, you got to throw the headband on. I love the idea of it. We got to make it happen here.
Joe, good thought.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go here. This was a comment from earlier in the show. Robert Starr says Chevy needs to get on the blower and shake things up. Coaching change did nothing. I'll say this. I don't think, even if things really fell apart for the Jets, I'm not sure how much of sellers they would be. I mean, you got move a guy like Andrew Kopp and Stastny potentially as well are the two guys that you could move, but there's not a lot that they would lose in being sellers. So I don't know that trade deadline would be much of a motivating factor in getting things done before a certain time. I think just the fact you need to turn things out doesn't more than that. But at this stage, coaching change has happened to the point that Robert Starr makes here. We've talked about this before, but I'm going to ask you the question maybe in a little bit of a different way, or maybe it's a different question entirely. Do you think Chevy is feeling any pressure at this stage to shake up the lineup? Because, I mean, losing 5 straight games where they are, they've already put themselves in a really tough spot to try and play their way back into the playoffs. At what stage as a GM do you have to look at this situation and say, I need to put my thumbprints on this because we've tried it in the coaching room, we've tried it with the young guys coming up, nothing is working. It's up to me now to go and like get on the phone and see if there's something. Well, one, does he have a plan or have a knowledge of what he thinks the team needs? And two, is it incumbent upon him to make a move given he thought that this was a team that could do great things this year? It's not doing it right now. It's in danger of this becoming maybe the most disappointing season in Jets 2.0 history. Is it incumbent on Chevy to do something within the next couple months if the slide continues?
Well, I mean, Sean, that's a fair question. And hey, let's not forget, Kevin Cheveldayoff 5 weeks ago, when Paul Maurice stepped down and Dave Lowry took over, said to his team and then said in the media that he challenged them to do something about the situation they were in. And at that stage, they were just below the playoff line, I believe. He said it's simple. You either can accept your lot in life or do something about it. And in the 5 weeks since that time, the Jets have not only not improved their situation has gotten worse. I mean, part of that was through no fault of their own because of COVID. But the Jets do need to play better. I think it's always tough in a salary cap situation where a team is spending into LTIR to make a massive kind of change. But we know it is possible. They did it just over a year ago, and we talked about this on Sunday. They made a foundational trade involving foundational pieces going in each direction in season. Now, the situation was different. The Jets don't have a player that's begging to be moved that's in their core group. So, I mean, these trades are easier to make in the offseason, but if the Jets become... I mean, again, here's the part, Sean. I mean, I don't think the Jets would be willing to trade first-round picks or things of that nature to try to squeak in on the second wildcard spot. But if you think you need to make a change with your core group, you have to listen. I'm not saying that a move will be made, but I think you have to listen to what the offers are. But the Jets can't just trade for only futures, Sean. We've talked about this. With Connor Hellebuyck, Mark Scheifele, and Blake Wheeler's contracts all expiring 2 seasons after this one, the Jets need guys that can help them as early as this year or next year, right? I mean, that's the situation that they're looking at. I mean, if they have to become sellers and Andrew Kopp gets moved, if they don't make any progress in terms of negotiation, that's fine. But we were talking about this morning. I mean, a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, they'd love to have Andrew Kopp in a Yanni Gourde / Barclay Goodrow kind of scenario.
Yep.
But guess what? I mean, the Jets, do you think the Jets want a late first, like a first round pick that's 30th or 32nd? They'd rather have a guy like Matthew Joseph, who's under team control for a few more years at a rate where you can have him on a second or a third line depending on where things slot in. So for me, I'll be fascinated to see how this transpires. I've said all along that I think that Andrew Kopp was open to staying with the Winnipeg Jets. I think he would still be open. But what I would also say, Sean, I think that one thing that would be very difficult for someone like Andrew Kopp would be how this last year has gone in terms of in terms of COVID. I mean, we heard Elliot Friedman talk about it today, and he had it in 32 Thoughts. He said there was one player playing in the States that is a high-profile rental that had absolutely no interest in being traded to to a Canadian team. And that's something that Canadian teams may have an issue with when it comes to free agency. Now, again, I'm not saying this is applying to Andrew Kopp, but I think that Andrew Kopp has expressed quite a bit of frustration over the situation that the players in Canada have, had to deal with because of public health, and we understand why the restrictions are in place. But does that factor into the negotiation at all? I'm not sure. But man, oh man, I mean, in the next couple of weeks, the Jets got to get this figured out quickly, or else they're going to have to, back to your original question, I'm not sure the Jets can be buyers unless they're getting players with terms. Someone brought up Jacob Chychrun. Well, hey, I mean, would Jacob Chychrun help the Winnipeg Jets? Sure. But are the Jets willing to give up, the package Jeff Merrick and Elliott have been talking about is a present player, a first-round pick, and a high prospect. I mean, unless you're thinking about a situation where you're moving star player for a star player, I mean, I don't know. But the thing with Chychrun, 3 more years after this one, so he lines up with their window, but it's going to take a massive... Here's a great example. The Florida Panthers would love Jacob Chychrun. Do you think they want to trade? We just saw Anton Lundell for the first time in an NHL jersey, Sean, in this arena. You think the Florida Panthers are interested in trading Anton Lundell, who was chosen 12th overall in the 2020 draft?
Yeah.
Anton Lundell looks like a pretty good hockey player. But that's the level of player teams have to give up if you want to upgrade your defense core. And might I add, a defense core with the Florida Panthers that includes Aaron Ekblad. Hey, and with all due respect to Adam Fox and Cale Makar, who are great, Aaron Ekblad's got to be in the Norris discussion. This guy's playing great hockey. He is a great...
Maybe he would have won it last year if he wouldn't have got injured down the
Exactly, which is what I'm saying. To me, I mean, Florida's got a lot of great players. Love Barkov, love the way he plays. And Sean, what we saw from Barkov in Finland impressed me so much. For a guy who's supposed to be shy when it comes to his second language, seeing how he embraced the responsibility with Patrick Laine to be the showcase pieces on the billboard and the marquee in their home country, I was so blown away by his ability to connect with media in 2 languages and his ability to kind of show that warmth and spirit in his country. And again, oh, by the way, he's one of the best two-way players in the National Hockey League. But man, I mean, the Florida Panthers, they played without Gustav Forsling today. They played without Noah Acciari. I mean, this guy is a solid... He scored 20 goals with Boston, right? I mean... Acciari's great. I thought he was a guy the Jets should have been looking at a couple of years back in free agency. He can score, great secondary scoring, physical guy, played on winning teams. Man, I mean, and Gustav Forsling wasn't even playing today. So, that's a top 4 defenseman on the Florida Panthers. But if they get a guy like Chychrun, it's going to cost them. But man, that would only help their depth. So with the Jets, I mean, it would take a humongous package. And what we also know, Arizona would love to send Chychrun to the East if they have to move him. They don't want him in the Central Division moving forward. No chance.
Joe, I don't know what you want us to say. They're a good team. Did you watch the game tonight? We're not trying to turn this into a Florida lovin', but it keeps coming back to the fact that we just saw one of the best hockey teams in the league, and that's the standard the Jets are trying to get to, the standard they thought that they could reach at the beginning of the year, which is going to bring me back to the conversation.
And sorry, that's the whole point, Sean. I mean, you asked me if I think the Jets should be a buyer. I mean, what do you have to get as a buyer to think you're going to beat the Florida Panthers or the Colorado Avalanche? Right now, the Jets are a bubble team. That's what they are. They're not an elite team. Can they get there in the last 40-plus games? Well, that's up to them to show. But to this point, they haven't shown the signs of being an elite team.
Well, I'm going to go back to the original question about this, and I'm going to couch it by saying I've talked about Ken Holland in the past with Edmonton Oilers, and where the Edmonton Oilers are now. I think that was a team that dealt with their goaltending situation for a long time, maintained as much faith as they could in that team and in those top 2 players and their ability to score as they could for as long as they could. And we're talking seasons that this team tried to hold things together like that. So I'm just going to get rid of this.
I got it.
You got it.
Yep.
So we're talking seasons that they held it together. What I see happening in Edmonton right now is just a team that is at the stage where they're just saying, like, we cannot do this until the goaltending gets addressed. They've lost hope. And to me, as much as Ken Holland has done there, that I think is good, and I think he's done a lot of good there, it's your job to address this situation. If you can't find out a way to bring in a goaltender that can help this team, if the Edmonton Oilers continue to crash and burn like they are right now and flame out of this season, to me, that's on Ken Holland. There's nothing else that you can say about that. With the Winnipeg Jets in this situation, we walked into this season. Again, this is a team that, of their own volition, brought up the Stanley Cup over and over and over again. Blake Wheeler had to pump the brakes on his own team and say, listen, it may look good on paper, but you got to go out and prove it on ice. They haven't been doing it this year. You talked about Kevin Cheveldayoff and the coaching change and where this team was, and him saying these players can either be okay with this or they can not be okay with this and go do something about it. Well, so far, the surge that I think he was expecting, the response that he was expecting from that has not come. So as a general manager, you've put together a team on paper that you think has the potential to challenge for the Stanley Cup. They're not doing it. You've challenged the players. The coaching change has been made, and let's just say this right out of the bat. It's Kevin Cheveldayoff who came out and said, we're going with Dave Lowry and we're going with him until the end of the season. That's a Kevin Cheveldayoff decision. So whatever you want to say about the coaches, I know there's people in the chat room saying we need to see them under a different coaching staff to see what this team is capable of. That may be true, but the decision has been made to go with this coaching staff, and that's where we're at with the general manager. We've talked, and Scotty Billick has been on this program and talked time and time again about this team kicking the can down the road. 2018 was supposed to be the beginning of something, and it was the apex of something, and has seemingly been going downhill every single year since then. This was the year things were supposed to bounce back. It's not happening. Like Kenny Holland addressing the goaltending situation, if the Jets crash out and do not make the playoffs this season, I put the blame for that squarely on the shoulders of Kevin Cheveldayoff. Because at this stage right now, he's stepped up. He's put in a different coach that could have had an effect on this. If the coach isn't, then he should have found a different coach. He should know the group and know what kind of coach they need. So I don't. Whatever happens with this going forward, I don't put that on Dave Lowry. And the players, well, it's the players that you've put together. You've challenged them. If they're not responding, it's your job to go find players that respond to the challenge that you make. So like Kenny Holland in Edmonton, if they crash out and the goaltending situation isn't addressed and they flame out of the playoffs, that is on Ken Holland. If the Winnipeg Jets do not rebound and do not make the playoffs this season, and especially do so in a manner where they look listless, like we've seen them look throughout this process, inconsistent, not rising to the challenge, not putting in the effort needed defensively, I don't think there is anywhere to go but to blame Kevin Cheveldayoff for that. And if we're blaming Kevin Cheveldayoff, well, then we're at the stage where if they want to get something done and it's not getting done on the ice and it's not getting done, in the standings and the results, to me, I believe it's incumbent upon Kevin Cheveldayoff to do something to shake up this roster, to get them moving. And in my opinion, if things aren't turning around in the next 3 weeks, that decision has to come at that time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think they're going to look at the core, right? The Jets made some moves to upgrade the defense. They brought in a couple veterans with term, Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt. I think they've helped the Jets' defense, but the Jets haven't made as many strides as maybe we're thinking they were going to make, or what they thought they were going to make. So, obviously Nikolai Ehlers being out is going to hurt the Winnipeg Jets. So if he is available on February 14th, well, that's a big difference for the Jets than if he's available for March 1st. But with the deadline being later this year, we'll have a great idea if the Jets are going to be buyers or sellers. But to your point, Sean, if the Jets don't turn it around in the next couple of weeks, they either need to be looking at making some significant changes to the core, or they're going to have to try to do it on the fly and pick up some players with term. But again, I think to me this is more likely to be an off-season type of scenario. But I wouldn't rule out the Jets looking to try to improve now. I just don't think that they can be adding rentals at this situation, given where their window is. But
well, that's what I'm saying though, Ken. Like, this is, to me, I don't think it's a rental situation. I think that's a dangerous situation to get into when you're that far out of the playoffs. But I'll say that, like, the thing that you brought up, like, that's what bugs me here. If you're the boss and you walk down and you challenge your players, and the response that you're getting from players is, Paul Stastny is saying tonight that this team doesn't have attention to detail and that they're inconsistent. And these are the conversations we are having. It's that you did not get the response you were hoping for. And that's my take on this. It's like, if you are a boss and you demand this of your employees, and then your employees don't get that, then you've got to go out and find guys who are going to give you what you are asking for. If your team is not giving you, if your players, the players that you acquired and put in a position to succeed, are not responding how you've asked them to respond, I don't see that there's anywhere else to go but to switch out your personnel. So I'm not talking about adding a couple guys here at the trade deadline and making a push for it. I'm talking about fundamental changes. I'm talking about, I asked this from you, you didn't give it to me. I need to move on and find someone who is going to give me what I'm asking for.
Sure, but again, most of the contenders don't have room for $6 million players if we're talking about moving core pieces. So those moves are easier to make in the offseason. I'm not saying the Jets shouldn't explore those options, Sean, if they believe they need to change the personnel. I actually give Kevin Cheveldayoff credit for coming out publicly, first challenging his team and then saying it publicly, because that's what he should say in that situation. If the team that you are managing says that they're a contender and wants to be one, and then has only been a bubble team, you should be asking for more from them. And I think the players are asking more of themselves. Now, again, this is what we say all the time. It's time for the real Winnipeg Jets to stand up. And if this is all that they have, well, then this isn't good enough. And that reinforces what you're saying. If this is all that the Jets have, and if they're only going to be in the murky, mushy middle, then they need to make some real changes to the core group.
We're going to leave on that. So I got to say, it would sure be nice if Thursday, Ken, we could do this show after a win, because it's getting tedious to talk about some of these, struggles and issues. But I mean, we're here for it. We're going to get through it. I got to say, it was asked for early in the show. I got to apologize. I didn't have the headband. I forgot it today. I'm not used to being on the road like this.
Wake up, Sean. Wake up.
And I'll tell you, I deserve a wake up, because they played Tool, my favorite band, Stinkfist, in the building here tonight. And if there was ever a night we needed to rock out to a song like Sean's Headband, it was on the night that they woke up. They woke up here in Canada Life Center and played some Tool. Just absolutely phenomenal stuff. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Another great show. Active chat room. We really appreciate it. We're going to figure this out, all of us together. We're going to get together. We're going to figure this thing out and figure the Jets' way out of this. And we'll start by doing it again on Thursday.
Hey, one quick one. We should have said
Canucks. Go for it.
Sorry, great night for hockey talks. Again, we'll get into that maybe a little bit more on Thursday, actually. But
sure.
Glad to see the video on Rick Rippon. I mean, I covered Rick when he broke into professional hockey, and I'm glad to see that both the Vancouver Canucks and the Winnipeg Jets and teams around the NHL are making a point of making it important to shine a light on mental illness, and the discussion will continue. This isn't just a one-day thing; it's got to be 365, and I'm glad that we're getting to a better place. And one other thing from the weekend, Clark Gillies passing away. Sean, I have to say, the Islanders of the '80s were a fun team to watch. I loved watching them. I loved watching Butch Goring, Bobby Nystrom, John Tonelli, those kind of guys. Obviously, rest in peace, and thoughts are with the Gillies family. And I know you talked about it on the radio, but again, as a society, we got to be better when it comes to the racial incidents that have been happening. I mean, absolutely disgusting, and it needs to be cleaned up in terms of hockey getting to a better place in terms of its culture. Let's hope that we can all do our part to make it a better place.
You know what, Ken, since you went down that road, there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up. First of all, I want to give a congratulations to Sheila North Wilson, former colleague of mine at CBC. She just took my old chair at the late night news at CBC. Congratulations on her getting that job. I was teasing her a little bit today, saying that some absolute legends came and sat in that chair, so she better take care of it. But that leads me to something else I want to say, and you're talking about, people that we've lost who are really important. I wanted to bring this up a couple shows ago, didn't have the opportunity to, but the person who sat in that chair at CBC Late Night News before I did and started that show was a phenomenal journalist by the name of Adrian Pan. Adrian Pan, my age, passed away last week. Heartbreaking news. Phenomenal journalist. When I started my career, I was in Ryerson in Toronto. I came to Global Winnipeg here, and I worked as the producer on the late night show there, where she filled in for a year for Eva Kovacs, who was on her second mat leave, I believe, at the time. Adrian Pan was hard, demanding, driven, curious, fun, inquisitive, just an absolutely phenomenal journalist. I got to the pleasure of working with her the first 2 years I was at Global, and then we moved both basically at the same time to CBC at the same time. And I worked with her another 3 years there before she moved home to work at CBC Edmonton. She was one of the most consistent parts of my career to start out. She was a really, really good friend. She was a mentor. She was a phenomenal journalist, and we lost too soon. If any of you remember her, we were lucky to have had her for the time that we had in Winnipeg. I wanted to just say how much and how fiercely I admired her, and how sad it is that we've lost her. So to her friends and her family, we lost a good one. Other than that, let's shut this down, Ken. Get back at it on Thursday. Thanks again for everybody joining us. If you liked what you saw here, do us a favor, click like, subscribe, and we'll see you again on Thursday. Thank you so much for your time. Bye, everybody.